very good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone present here. On behalf of Hindi University, West Bengal, I extend heartfelt greetings to all participants joining us for today's insightful webinar on comparative world literatures. We are privileged to have as our distinguished chairperson, Professor Nandini Sahu ma'am, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Hindi University, whose inspiring vision continues to guide and strengthen our academic journey. Our eminent speakers for today are Professor Manpreet Kaur Kang and Dr. Shashi Khurana, both widely respected scholars whose research and literary contributions have enriched the field of world literatures. Although Professor Nandini Sahu ma'am could not be with us in person as she is traveling, she has graciously shared her thoughts and blessings through a special video message, which will be playing shortly. Now, it is my honor and privilege to introduce the chairperson of today's session, Professor Nandini Sahu, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Hindi University, West Bengal. Professor Nandini Sahu is a distinguished academician, celebrated poet, and amazing best-selling author whose luminous body of work beautifully bridges literature, philosophy, and culture. A double gold medalist in English literature, she completed her PhD under the mentorship of the late Professor Niranjan Mohanty at Vishwabharati University, Shantiniketan. With a distinguished career spanning more than 2 decades, she has contributed immensely as a poet, critic, researcher, and visionary academic leader. Her achievements have been recognized through numerous prestigious honors, including the Michael Madhusudan Academy Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award from SAFE, Tagore Samman, and a gold medal from the Honorable Vice President of India for her outstanding contribution to English studies. Author and editor of 23 acclaimed books, Professor Sahu's celebrated works, Sita, Medusa, Silver Poems on My Lips, and The Other Voice, delve into profound themes of mythology, womanhood, post-colonial identity, and cultural consciousness. She also serves as the founder and chief editor of the Interdisciplinary Journal of Literature and Language and has played a pioneering role in designing innovative academic programs across India. We are truly honored to have her with us today to chair this session. And now, since Professor Nandini Sahu has kindly shared her inaugural address through a video, I request our technical coordinator, Mr. Raj, to please play the message. Mr. Raj? Raj, we can't hear. Raj, the sound is off. We can't hear it, Raj. Okay, I think there is some technical issues. Raj, you can play it later then. I think that would be okay. If we can't hear it, it would be a bit difficult for us to understand Madam's message now. Okay, thank you. Now, as this technical issue, we can't hear it, but when we will share the YouTube video, the video will be there and it will be stitched with this present video. The whole video will be there. So I think we could hear it on our YouTube video at that time. Now, Moving forward, I must say that I have the great pleasure of introducing our first eminent speaker, Dr. Shashi Khurana ma'am, a renowned academician and scholar whose journey through teaching and research has been both inspiring and impactful. Dr. Khurana began her academic pursuit as a student at Delhi University and Jawaharlal Nehru University, where her passion for learning laid a strong foundation for her future in academia. She went to serve as a dedicated faculty member at Satyavati College, University of Delhi, where she continues her journey as both a teacher and a lifelong learner. Throughout her illustrious career, Dr. Khurana played a vital role in curriculum restructuring and actively contributed to the organization of seminars, workshops, and academic collaborations, enriching both faculty and student communities alike. Her literary engagement include her significant work, Stories of Women and Society in Asia, a compelling exploration of gender and social narratives, which is soon to be followed by its much anticipated sequel. At present, Dr. Khurana continues to contribute meaningful academia and society through her association with the University Women's Association of Delhi, an NGO devoted to the advancement of women's education and empowerment. Now, I would like to request Dr. Shashi Khurana ma'am for her very knowledgeable and illuminating lecture. Ma'am, please.
Uh, Thank you, Paramita, for that very pleasing to my ears introduction. Um, so, first and foremost, as I said earlier, I would like to thank for all of you, the entire Hindi University team and the department for setting up this webinar. And as I said earlier, it's a topic which really needs a, which can sort of be taken up at any level in terms of its exploration, in terms of exploration and research and discussion. I was also a little, was at the crossroads wondering, which side to go. Should it be, uh, form-centric discussion or genre discussion, or, eventually I did settle down to a thematic discussion. So the kind of a field that you've opened up for us, one can just go on and on and on. But what set me thinking was, how do we approach this? You know, uh, do we analyze text, or do we first need to read? So I think the most important enlightenment that can come through or can emerge from the study of comparative literature is reading. So when you read, you sort of imbibe what the literature of one place, one region, one part of the world is trying to say or trying to convey or has expressed, and then read up more and more literatures of maybe the same kind, maybe the poetry of the, let us say, the West and the East, poetry of the North and the South, or else the novels or whatever. I mean, there is any amount of reading that one can do. Uh, so I was, as I said, I was wondering how to begin this talk and how to enter this field. So what I decided to do was to take up a theme which could be looked at in two different literatures, maybe the Western, maybe British literature and Indian literature, or other literatures as well. Uh, Given the limited knowledge, the limited time that we have, I thought I will just stick to British literature and Indian literature. However, what I want to say is that at this point, that even if you're not able to read literature directly, we are falling back on translation. So what world literature has become accessible, readable, and one can immerse oneself in this in world literature that we're talking about through the aid of translation. So I think one of the most important tools that has been, given to us is by the translators who are doing this wonderful work of translation, and which is helping us to access literature of various languages, and to be able to feel the pulse through translation. So when we talk about world literature, I think we cannot avoid talking about translation as well. But I won't go into translation at this point because I thought when I picked up, the text that I wanted to sort of explore, I felt that I mean, at least for me, I did not need any translation, any translation to help me to discover what I was looking for. And I picked up one text which we had been teaching in at the undergraduate level, and which is a very rich, multifaceted text, and I think it's almost read everywhere in across most universities of India. And this is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte Bronte, as we all know, was a British novelist spanning the years 1816 to 1855. The novel Jane Eyre was published in 1847. Uh, what I looked for in this novel was the theme of hunger. So there is deception, there is, magic realism, and there is schizophrenia, there is isolation, but hunger. And, there are just about 2 or 3 pages which have been devoted to the theme of hunger and the experience of the protagonist when she is out in the open. To some extent, one would say her own choice, the choice that she made. She made a choice, and then when she was exposed to the open, helpless, uncared for, alone, and without any resources. So, what was it that was the biggest suffering at that point of time? And what I discovered was, in the 2, 3 pages that I would be reading, because one has to, I think reading is the first step to understanding to understanding it, to come to terms with the theme, and then maybe compare it to at a later stage, to another text. So this is Jane Eyre, and when she leaves Thornfield, the house in which she had been living and where she was about to get married, and then she made this choice of just walking away. And she walked and walked and walked, and she describes the surroundings. And I read, and I will be reading from the text most of the time. What a still, hot, perfect day! What a golden desert is spreading moors, everywhere sunshine. I wished I could live in it and on it. I saw a lizard run over the crags. I saw a bee busy among the sweet bilberries. I would fain at the moment have become bee or lizard, that I might have found fitting nutriment, the importance of nourishment, the importance of food, the importance of being deprived of food, the horrors rather of being deprived of food, the hunger which can drive anybody anywhere. And I read on. Sorry, so I just repeat this. And I would fain at the moment have become bee or lizard, that I might have found fitting nutriment, permanent shelter here. But I was a human being and had a human being's wants. I must not linger where there is nothing to supply them. I rose, I looked back at the bed, I left, hopeless of the future. I wished but this, that my maker, that my Maker, that is God, the Almighty, had that nice thought good to require my soul of me while I slept, and that this very frame, the body, absolved by death from further conflict with fate, had now but to decay quietly and mingle in peace with the soil of this wilderness. Life, however, was yet in my possession with all its requirements and pains and responsibilities. But the burden must be carried, the want provided for, the suffering endured, the responsibility fulfilled. I set out. So this is her experience, when she's almost at the bad end of her life, in the sense that, she doesn't seem to be having anything, any resources. She wished she could be a lizard or a bee, so that at least, she would get her nourishment from nature herself. But she was human. So the place that hunger has in specifically to a human being is something that literature brings out, or this particular work has brought out in such a painful way. So she enters the village, and what is she looking for? She's looking for work, but she's not been able to find it. I could hardly, she enters the village. At about 2 o'clock p.m., I entered the village. At the bottom of its one street, there was a little shop with some cakes of bread in the window. I coveted a cake of bread. With that refreshment, I could perhaps regain a degree of energy. Without it, it would be difficult to proceed. The wish to have some strength and some vigor returned to me as soon as I was amongst my fellow beings. I felt it would be degrading to faint with hunger on the causeway of a hamlet. Had I nothing about me I could offer in exchange for one of those rolls, the food that she sees in the shop, I considered. I had a small silk handkerchief tied around my throat. I had my gloves. I could hardly tell how men and women in extremities of destitution proceeded. Very vital point that has been brought out. When we look at the theme of hunger and want, how do people live? How do people, survive without their basic needs, being fulfilled? I did not know whether either of these articles could be accepted. That is the handkerchief, and the glove that she had. That those were her only possessions besides the clothes that she was wearing. Probably they would not, but I must try. I entered the shop. A woman was there. Seeing a respectably dressed person, a lady as she supposed, she came forward with civility. How could she serve me? I was seized with shame. My tongue would not utter the request I had prepared. I dared not offer her the half-worn glove, the creased handkerchief. Besides, I felt it would be absurd. I only begged permission to sit down a moment, as I was tired. Disappointed in the expectation of a customer, she coolly acceded to my request. She pointed to a seat. I sank into it. I felt sorely urged to weep, but conscious how unreasonable the manifestation would be, I restrained it. Soon, see, and then again, how we try to hide, try to conceal our feelings. She says, I restrained it. I restrained myself from crying. So, how hunger, want, and of course, leading to extreme abject poverty is depicted in literature, in this particular, British literature, this text of British literature. I reflected. I was driven to the point now. I was brought face to face with necessity. Being, again, a very important, uh, concept that is being created over here through the author. I was brought face to face with necessity. I stood in the position of one without a resource, without a friend, without a coin. I must do something. What? I must apply somewhere. Where? So she's in this alien neighborhood, alien in the sense that she's not aware of, she doesn't know anybody over here. She's driven herself, brought herself to this place, and now she's looking for food and looking for food to survive. the need to confront the necessity of life. And then she asked for, she, looked around for employment, but there is none to engage. And then what is she told? You're a woman. Nobody's going to engage you. So there is employment in the sense that there are two, uh, you know, uh, 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 there are two factories which are running there, but there is no employment for a woman like for a woman. And so she goes further inside the village to find out what she can do, how she can survive, and move on. And uh, again, once more, I took off my handkerchief. Once more, uh, I thought of the case of bread in the little shop. Oh, for butter crust. For but one mouthful to allay the pang of famine. Instinctively, I turned my face again to the village. I found the shop again and went in. And though others were there, besides the woman, I ventured the request, would you give me a roll for this handkerchief? She looked at me with evident suspicion. Nay, she never sold stuff in that way. Almost desperate, I asked for half a cake. She again refused. How could she tell where I had got that handkerchief from? She said. Would she take my gloves? No. What could she do with them? Now, the protagonist author turns to the reader. Reader, it is not pleasant to dwell on those details. Some say there is enjoyment in looking back to painful experience past. But at this day, I can scarcely bear to review the times to which I allude. The moral degradation, blent with the physical suffering, form, form too distressing the recollection ever to be willingly dwelt on. So again, the very poignant experience of the protagonist conveyed in directly to the reader by the author. So here, we can sort of look at the theme, the content, and the way, the form in which it has been conveyed. Uh, then we move on to, she moves further inside, and she finds a house over there, a hut actually, and she knocks, and then she says, "Will you give me a piece of bread? For I am very hungry." He cast on me a glance of surprise, and without answering, he cut a thick slice from his loaf and gave it to me. I imagine he did not think I was a beggar, but only an eccentric sort of a lady who had taken a fancy to his brown loaf. As soon as I was out of sight of his house, I sat down and I ate it. So, the relief and the dependency on food, the survival of a human being, and how this is depicted in this particular text. And then, this person was given the loaf. He goes inside, and towards morning, it rained. The whole of the following day was wet. Do not ask me, reader, to give a minute account of that day. As before, I sought work. As before, I was repulsed. As before, I starved. But once thick food passed my lips at the door of a cottage. I saw a little girl about to throw a mess of cold porridge into a pig trough. Will you give me that? I asked. She stared at me. Mother, she explained, there is a woman who wants me to give her these porridge. Well, lad, replied a voice within, give it to her if she's a beggar. I, pig, doesn't want it. The girl emptied and the stiffened mold into my hand, and I devoured it ravenously. Uh, so, you know, I can stop at this point from this particular text. The description and the depiction, the description, and the sharing of the idea, the state condition of hunger. And so this, and for many of you who know the novel, you know what happens after that. But this particular part in the novel, I'm talking about British literature and Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte. This particular section in the novel, which focuses so poignantly on the, pangs of hunger, as she says, of the protagonist. So when I read this, and then after having, I thought I would, settle for the theme of hunger in uh, world literature, and I could only pick on, to begin with this text, and then I said, let's see what some other text says, because I'm just wondering actually at this, point, since we are talking about world literature and and I'm looking at this area of the thematic aspect of the world literature, or themes in world literature. What are the common themes? How have they been dealt with? In what ways? And who are the people who are the characters? Let us say, or the the figures in literature who have been who've been sort of used by the writers for depicting uh, hunger. So since I'm focusing only on hunger, so I was looking at something else also. Which we had again, this comes back from my own experience of having studied and taught some of this literature. Some and there was a time when we were also doing not we've never done for quite some time during our courses that I was associated with. We were not doing comparative literature as such, but we were doing literature uh, texts from different literatures without really focusing on comparative literature. And then I came across, and again, some of our students, of course, would be very very senior now, uh, also studied this particular text, and I will go to this next text now, in which once again I'm focusing on the theme of hunger and how it drives people, drives the characters, you know, to such to such I would not use the word degradation at all, but to such conditions that to such a condition that hunger, food, the basic need, the basic necessity of being able to survive is becomes so very crucial, and we take it for granted. But look at the way the literatures have dealt with this. So I will move now to a very uh, small novel called Nectar in a Spell by Kamala Markandeya, and now diasporic author. Sorry, she's no more, of course. So this is the title of the novel is Nectar in a Spell, which was published in 1954. And Kamala Markandeya's own timeline, 1924 to uh, 2004. Okay. And, this is, of course, some of you who would be familiar with this novel because it was, a very widely used text in many of the literature courses. So this is I go to the point when there is the effect or impact of industrialization and colonialism has impacted what it has done to the rural areas, how it has impacted the lives of the people there. And there is the family of Nathan and Rukmini, if and the son, one after the other, they're not getting enough from the land which they're tilling and harvesting. So when the tannery is set up, one by one, the young people, the boys especially, they go to the tannery to find work and to be able to sustain their living. And of course, the poverty kept increasing with industrialization. In fact, impacted the rural areas, the rural regions to an extent that it became more impoverished. And so this is from Rukmani's point of view, the protagonist, and she's talking about the time when her son was, also like the others, went to join the tannery to be able to sustain the family. And the people from the tannery have come with with her son, whose name is Raja, and she's told, and I'm quoting. This is actually I'm going to focus on some parts of chapter 15 and 16 of this of Nectarine Field. And I'm quoting. He had been caught, they said. Something about money. What had my son to do with money? Who had not a pie of his own? He was not very strong, they told me. They merely laid hands on him, and he fell. As if I did not know him, thin and brittle he had grown. But why should others lay hands on him? They told me, but the sense of the word escaped. They told me I could not remember. They repeated themselves again and again, but I kept forgetting. I heard Ira is the daughter of the same family, begin to sing a low dirge. She was rocking gently back and forth, and she was crying. What are you crying for? I said. You have little enough strength without dissolving it into tears. She looked at me stupidly and away and down at her brother. Her sorrow flowed to me. The numbness began to clear. I tried frantically to keep it. I might as well have tried to imprison the cloud. For this, I have given you birth, my son, that you should lie in the end at my feet with ashes in your face and coldness in your limbs, and yourself departed without trace, leaving this huddle of bones and flesh without meaning. Now, I'll just stop at this point. See, this description, this boy is, supposedly caught stealing. And so he's, probably been hit and he collapses, he dies. But through his life, he's been an undernourished uh, boy growing up without the basic needs, without the food required for the body, and enough food required for the body. And these are poor, impoverished peasants from this area. And so I will just move on further. In the same family, there's another uh, boy who's turning 5 years now, and he also is on the verge of he is of course malnutrition, is suffering from malnutrition and on the verge of starvation. Um, there is a short phase in the novel at this point between 15 and 16 chapters when the corn has been sowed and the corn is waiting to be ripened, and the Rukmani and her husband, they're together, and they're thinking about all the work that they have to do. And she says, there is the reaping, I said, and the threshing and winnowing. How shall we manage when the time comes? How shall we manage? We are hardly strong enough to even survive. Uh, when the time comes, Nathan said with a gleam in his eye, the strength will be forthcoming. Never fear. I looked at him doubtfully, thin and drawn that he was. And, time passes by, and she notices. And, there's a description of the little boy, the 5-year-old boy, who is, as I said, completely undernourished. And it is not long to wait, I said, trying to hearten her. Sorry, it is the daughter, the sister, who says, uh, she comes out also to the field where the parents are sitting. It is hot within, she said forlornly. I could not rest. She went and picked a head of paddy before sitting down beside us. I saw her fingers passing the husk, feeling for the grain within. How much longer? The same question. How much longer? How much longer for what? For the harvest, for the food to be brought home, for the nourishment the starving family needs. The same question, the answer to which she already knew, who had lived on the land since birth. 3 weeks. Nathan's reply, grave, sincere, absolutely honest, where another might have been tempted to easier words. It is not long to wait, I said, trying to hearten her. And if the gods are kind, it may even be sooner. But then, what is on the daughter's mind? Daughter whose name is Iravadi, and she called Ira in the novel most of the time. That is what he prayed for, that it might not be too late. The tears had brightened Ira's eyes. The silences of my husband, the twitching face of Selvan, all came from one thing. The thought imprisoned in the brain, but incapable of utterance, that Kuchi, the 5 year son of the family, who is, suffering from complete malnutrition, that Kuti might not live to see the harvesting. The rest of us might struggle on. Our endurance was greater. But he was only a child, and not yet 5, who had already waited a long time, not suffered more than any of us, whether from the unsuitable food or from the constant restless movement of his body, scratching. Of course, all the illnesses that set in because of malnutrition. Sometimes, after mourning for hours at a stretch, he would fall into an exhausted daze. It could not be called sleep. It was nothing so sweet, and I would go to him with a beating heart to see if the fight was ended. Just waiting for death to set in. Why? Because of starvation. And sorry, but again and again he struggled back to consciousness, took up again his tormented living. Almost I wished it otherwise, wishing for death rather than, a state of starvation while you're living. However, what happens, the turn that, this takes. Some 2 or 3 days later, I noticed a change in Kuti. His eyes lost their dullness, and the whimpering that had been so harrowing to listen to lessened and stopped. I thought it was the end, a breeze rallying, a frothing up of the last reserves of strength, where there is no longer any need to hold back, like the sudden brilliant glow of an expiring taper, since we gave him nothing. There being nothing to give, there being nothing to give, that might account for the change. The following day, however, the improvement continued, and that night he slept peacefully. I gazed at the small tired face, soothed by sleep, as it had not been for many nights. And even as I puzzled about the change, profound gratitude flooded through me, and it seemed to me that the gods were not remote, not unheedful, since they had heard his cries and stilled them, as it were, by a miracle. Iravati crept up to me as I watched and smiled at me and the child, and I whispered, "He is better." But there was no need, as she, of all the people, knew. And how did he improve? Now, this is a question that, of course, would, take us further down. It was dark. In the darkness, I heard uh, the darkness was lifting, and I heard the sound of footsteps, very soft, less heard than felt as a slight tremor of the ground. If it had been a reverberating gong, then the sound would not have been more violent yet. My fancies fled headlong from me. In that place, a cloud of black and grey arose, revolving before my eyes, and assuming fantastic shapes and forms, until at last one stood out clearly away from the swirling mist and face, and with a face. And so, so this part I'll just skip a little bit, because what happens is that, there is this other woman in the novel. Uh, she been prostituting herself, and at the same time, for the sake of food, of course. And Rukmini, she mistakes her, mistakes, this form that she sees at night for Kunti. And of course, she tries to beat her up and get her out of the way. And then, when she's doing that, assuming in the dark that this is that other woman who's come to the house to maybe steal, she says, she hears, then I heard a thin, shrill scream, "Mother, mother!" Hands were dragging me away. I felt myself pulled and thrown to one side. "Fiend, mad woman!" Nathan was shouting. "Accursed mother!" He was bending over the form, doing something to it. I saw he was frightened and wondered, forgetting it had come from sleep. He turned to me. "Are you out of your mind? Your own daughter? You killed her, murderess." So what is it? She mistakes, uh, in the dark, her daughter for Kunti, who's supposed to be the village prostitute, and somebody who steals food also, and she mistakes her, and then it is what does she discover, and then she's able to relate the recovery of Kuti to what Iravadi is doing, what Ira has been doing. Uh, Kuti, lying in a corner of the hut, began to moan. Ira heard and opened her eyes, gesturing vaguely towards him. I went to her first. Lie still, the cut will open again. She looked at me somberly. Feed him! He is hungry. Take the rupee you will find in my sari. I knew then that it was she who had been responsible for the improvement in Kuti, not I, not my prayers. So I'll stop, quoting reading from here, from this book. So what is it, the sister who stealthily leaves the house every night to sell her body to be able to earn some that 1 rupee which she brings back in her sari to be able to feed Kuti, who has recovered as her his mother noticed. And so, uh, where do you go? I repeated. Rukmini is asking the daughter. Tell me only where you go. Do not ask, he said. It is better that you should not know. She was combing her hair, letting it fall away from her neck, first one way, then another, until the whole head and hair was sleek and shining. She had troubled so much since she had not troubled so much since she was a bride. I saw her go out in the dark, sari tightly wrapped about her. Saw her walk to the town along the narrow lane which ran past the tannery, following it to where it broadened with shops along the one side and tawdry stalls on the other, where men with bold eyes lounged smoking or drinking from frothing toddy stalls. She moved jauntily, stepping in. So, uh, she's there to sell herself to be able to earn a bit of money to alleviate the uh, starvation, almost the fatal starvation, that we have seen in this novel. And in the previous one as well, I mean, Jane is also almost fatal. She would have died had she not pulled up that courage to be able to go and ask for that crunch of, that piece of bread. And here is, in this starvation, hunger, and death. And the woman who sort of prostitutes herself to uh, be able to get earn food for her little starving brother. And so, I've made this, I've read these, the sources, I've used these sources to focus on the theme of hunger and how poignant it has been, poignantly it has been depicted and described. I don't know whether I have just 5 minutes more for the reference to another piece. Again, hunger. And that's titled Hunger. So we had read from Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and we had read from uh, Necromancy, Kamla Markandeya's Necromancy, and this is a poem titled Hunger. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but let's look at it in the way you see, and how literature is dealing with hunger or depicting hunger. This is Hunger, Jayant Samahapatra, timeline 1928-2023. The poem was composed, composed or published. I'm not very clear about that. Composed or published perhaps in 1976. Not composed or published. Uh, Title is Hunger. Paramita, may I read it? Okay. So this is, I will just read the whole poem, and then it's for you to absorb it and maybe discuss it at another time. Hunger. That's the title. It was hard to believe the flesh was heavy on my back. The fisherman said, "Will you have her?" Carelessly trailing his nets and his nerves as though his words sanctified the purpose with which he faced himself. I saw his white bone thrash his eyes. I followed him across the sprawling sand, my mind thumping in. The flesh is clinging. Hope lay perhaps in burning the house I lived in. Silence gripped my sleeve. His body clawed at the frost his old nets had only dragged up from the trees. I just repeat this. Silence gripped my sleeve. His body clawed at the frost his old nets had only dragged up from the sea. In the flickering dark, his lean-to opened like a wound. The wind was I, and the day the night before, palm fronds scratched my skin. Inside the shack, an oil lamp played the hours bunched to the wall. Over and over, the sticky suit crossed the space of my mind. I heard him say, "My daughter, she's just turned 15. Feel her. I'll be back soon. Your bus leaves at 9." The sky fell on me, and the father's exhausted while. Long and lean, her ears were cold as rubber. She opened her wormy legs wide. I felt the hunger there. The other one, the fish slithering, turning inside. So this is another phase of hunger, and where hunger has been, uh, depicted or has been, and, has been analyzed at two different levels. I think I'm using the wrong word, analyze, not analyze really, but the way it has been felt, the way it has been presented, you know. And with this poem, with this reading, I would like to end my reading of just three sources from in which I try to trace the theme of hunger in by way of drawing parallels and contrasting. Like in Jane Eyre, uh, does she feel the need to prostitute herself? She's looking for work, and here in Next One is Saved, Ira, you know, prostitutes herself for to be able to earn money for her little brother. And here is in hunger, Mahapatra's hunger, the fisherman, the father, who is drawn up nothing from the sea, old neck, hunger, starvation, resourceless. All right, and so he goes, he takes this wild, as has been described by the fisherman, the so wild the step or the alternative to be able to survive, to be able to get out of that very demeaning and helpless condition of hunger. And hunger, my friends, we see it all around us. Yes, Paramita, if I have your permission, I will just stop at this point.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much that you explored the harrowing theme of hunger and destitution in the novels you mentioned, focusing on the protagonist's physical and emotional suffering. You also highlighted how, despite isolation and deprivation, the protagonist struggled to preserve dignity and hope, even wishing for self sufficiency. Through this, you emphasized the terrifying power of hunger and its deep reflection on human vulnerability and survival. Thank you so much for such an insightful lecture. Now, I think the technical issue has been resolved, so I request our technical coordinator to play the video message from our Honorable VC, ma'am. Mr. Raj, please play.
Namaskar. I welcome the participants, the speakers, researchers, faculty of Hindi University and other universities who are a part of this important lecture series, the students and everyone. Namaskar. I welcome the participants, the speakers, researchers, faculty of Hindi University and other universities who are a part of this important lecture series, the students and everyone who takes interest in comparative world literatures to be a part of this very important lecture series offered from Hindi University, West Bengal. We started this series in the month of January 2025 and till date, within a period of 9 months, almost 50 speakers all over the country and outside have substantially contributed to this lecture series as speakers, researchers. They have discussed their own research with us, their books. They have discussed syllabus design. They have told us what is comparative literature, what kind of texts can be compared, what is interdisciplinary research, and how to create a new discipline and a new department called comparative world literatures in Hindi University, West Bengal. In the very first lecture, the pertinent question came to us: what kind of texts and what languages can be compared? What is the role of Bhasha, literatures and translation studies in comparative pedagogy? What kind of texts can actually be compared? And who is the right person to be the stakeholder and the researcher of comparative world literatures? Such complex questions, very critical questions that came to us. We have been trying to address those throughout this lecture series through the best brains of the world, through the speakers who never shy away from questions and challenges that they might be facing in their own research vis-a-vis comparative studies, or they don't shy away from my questions, my difficult questions. Whenever any speaker becomes a part of our lecture series, the next moment I make it a point that we collect the complete research from that particular speaker, make it a part of the volume that we are going to take out from Hindi University, and then in due course of time we are going to use that volume as a part of our syllabus from the Department of Comparative World Literatures, which is under, we are preparing, we are working on that now. So to be a part of this lecture series is actually to be a part of history. As the founder vice chancellor of Hindi University, it definitely was a very big challenge for me, which I tried to convert into an opportunity through this lecture series. It has become very popular. People from very many universities are approaching Hindi University to use this lecture series, and we are also working on that kind of collaborations. Today, two very important speakers who are going to be a part of this lecture series are Professor Manpreet Kang and Professor Shashi Khurana. I welcome both the esteemed scholars to contribute to deliver their lectures. I may be absent during their lecture, but I am definitely going to be a part of the YouTube and listen to the lectures by both the eminent scholars because of my pre-scheduled engagements and meetings. But yes, I would listen to the lectures by both of you, Professor Manpreet Kang and Professor Shashi Khurana. I am going to listen to you very carefully. I am going to request and invite both of you to contribute your papers, research papers, and your lectures to be a part of the volume that I will be editing. We are taking out from Hindi University. And about both the speakers today, let me put it on record for the audiences, for the students, participants, and all other viewers who are listening to us from the YouTube channel, that I'm more than confident that Professor Manpreet Kang and Professor Shashi Khurana are going to create a completely different pedagogy and a point of view for all of us. Professor Manpreet Kang is an established scholar in the country and otherwise. She participates in very important programs, meetings, decision making. She's a part of the decision making committees in many universities. That is how I have met her. She's a very warm person, very supportive. She's very popular as well. Students admire her, not just because of the outstanding research that she has been doing, but also because of her kindness, her compassion, and people can reach out to Professor Manpreet Kang. That is how I perceive and I admire Professor Manpreet Kang. Professor Manpreet, I welcome you on my personal behalf to Hindi University to be a part of this lecture series. And I'm going to listen to you and get back to you with all my questions, and I'm going to trouble you a lot in future when we design the syllabus of comparative world literatures for our university. And the next speaker is Professor Shashi Khurana. I think I will take hours and hours if I actually plan to speak about Professor Shashi Khurana. She is a person who is one of my role models. The kind of reading that she does, she reads literature, she reads critical books, she contributes substantially to the lives of the creative writers by her discussions, her critical engagement with the writers directly. In the middle of a very important meeting dealing with administration, Professor Shashi Khurana is one person who can actually hold the hand of a writer and take him or her out and ask a question regarding his or her text if she has a question. She will not allow you to drop her question. You have to answer to her question, even if it's a meeting, even you have to take lunch, you have not taken lunch, but Professor Shashi Khurana will definitely make a writer speak out. So she is a facilitator. I admire her, I have a lot of respect for her, and I'm extremely happy and proud that Professor Shashi Khurana agreed to be a part of our lecture series, and she is going to deliver a lecture for my colleagues and my students today. Professor Shashi, I am going to listen to you very carefully. I'll get back to you with my questions. And yes, when we design the syllabus of the Department of Comparative World Literatures for Hindi University West Bengal, I am more than confident that I can reach out to you, I can take your help, and now you are a part of the Hindi University West Bengal as a family. We regard you, we respect you. Once again, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj, for sharing the video message. Now, I must say that I have the pleasure of introducing our next distinguished speaker, Professor Manpreet Kaur Kang ma'am, a distinguished scholar whose academic and research contributions have greatly enriched the fields of American literature, gender studies, and the writing of the Indian diaspora. With over 3 decades of teaching experience, Professor Kang has been an inspiring mentor and guide to numerous scholars and researchers. She is currently serving as Professor of English at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, New Delhi, where she also holds the position of Director Students Welfare. Professor Kang has authored 4 books and published around 13 research papers in reputed national and international journals. Her scholarly engagement extends beyond the classroom. She has been the past president of the International American Studies Association, IASA, and currently serves as the secretary of MELOW, the Society for the Study of the Multi-Ethnic Literatures of the World. She is also the editor of MEJO, MEJO, the Mellow Journal of World Literature, reputed peer-reviewed journal, and of Indraprastha, an international journal of culture and communication studies, published by her university's School of Humanities and Social Sciences. Her academic journey includes a prestigious Shastri Fellowship at the University of British Columbia,
चलो
Canada,
get up then if you have to go. रात को क्या रहता है?
and reflects her global academic engagement. Among her notable publications, Seeking a Female Identity, Adrian Reach and Annie Sexton, and her co-translated volume of Punjabi poems titled The Aftermath, stand out for their depth and literary insight. We are indeed honored to have Professor Manpreet Kaur Kang with us today to share her valuable thoughts and perspectives. Now, I would like to request Professor Manpreet Kaur Kang ma'am for her lecture.
Afternoon. Thank you so very much for inviting me to speak on this forum. And also thank you very much to the Honorable Vice Chancellor for such a warm welcome. And two things I'd like to clarify before I begin. One is that this is, world literature, comparative world literature is not really my area. So I was telling Professor Nandini, I said, I'd rather speak on, of course, I'll relate it to world literatures, but research, methodology, and formatting, because I've been editing a few journals, and with the theses which come in, I find that the formatting, is a huge issue, and I feel that I need to address that. And the second is that I thought that this is a talk for students, so it may seem a little basic, but I suppose that's what it is. We teachers also need to, go to our students with the basics so that they do not, make some of these very simple errors, which we think are very obvious, but I think they need to be spoken about. So I will very briefly speak on the research methodology and then formatting in comparative world literatures. So like I heard in the introduction in the morning, the Vice Chancellor was saying that speakers earlier have spoken about what comparative world literature is. So I will be very brief, because that is what I was just going to touch upon, that what are the areas in which we can do research and what really it entails in comparative world literatures, and then briefly the methodology. And then like I said, I would like to focus more on the formatting, and I have half an hour. So Paramita, if you can tell me, please point out also if I overstretch. Huh? That means till 12:45. Huh? It's good to keep timelines. So comparative world literatures involve analyzing literary text across national, linguistic, and cultural boundaries to understand their interrelationships, influences, and broader cultural contexts. This interdisciplinary field uses various methodologies to compare texts, to compare themes, like the earlier speaker did. She was talking about hunger, and from different parts of the world, the text she had taken up. So that's, thematic comparison. And genre, sometimes genres are compared from different traditions, often related to international or global issues, or through lenses like translation, genre, and historical influences. And so when I'm talking about research, so in comparative world literatures, what are the major areas of research? One is cross-cultural and transnational studies, research that examines how literature overcomes or transcends national borders and cultures, often focusing on themes that are called universal or have global significance. Another area is, area of research is influence and adaptation. So how literary works, what influence they have, and how genres or specific ideas, they travel across nations, and create that impact or influence and transform, not only make an impact, they actually make change. They transform across different cultures and across time periods also sometimes. Though recent comparative world literatures now are trying to move away from the earlier concept of, comparison between nations. So it talks about comparative literature between cultures. The focus is that. Another area of research is interdisciplinary connections. How literature connects to other fields such as history, philosophy, politics, art, music, and science, to understand literature as a product of, it is influenced and response, and is a result of broader societal issues. Though these days, in the larger uh, arena of literature, we have, we say culture studies, music and art are also used as texts. So we may think of them as a broader literary area or interdisciplinary. Then another area of research is translation studies, research that explores the role of translation in the movement of literature and the relationship between different language translations. So these are some of the areas where research can be carried out. Then now, what are the methodologies for this research, and the approaches? So one is thematic studies. Again, like we had an example this morning, thematic studies. That is one of the ways of doing it, comparing universal concepts and themes, example, love, heroism, the environment, or hunger, across literary traditions. Another methodology or approach which may be used is genre studies, analyzing the structural elements of genres and how they manifest and differ across various cultures. The other more often used methodology is the comparative method, comparing literary works that may or may not have a direct historical link. Two literary works are compared, focusing on parallels. There could be different kinds of parameters or parallels to compare them. It could be the structure of the text, it could be the theme, it could be, again, some thematic or some historical event, some cultural basis, etc. So that also comes part of the theme. And of course, critical theory is often used as a methodology, that is, applying theoretical frameworks from various disciplines to analyze how literature functions within its cultural and social context. And within critical theory, or the approaches which influence studies, there could be different kinds, like thematic analysis, cross-cultural comparison to analyze literature beyond national oblique cultural borders, using theoretical lenses like post-colonialism, feminism, and gender studies, or analysis to understand how literature engages with broader cultural and historical contexts. So these are some of the methodologies and approaches. Now, what does comparative literature research explore? It explores how different cultures, across nations, or it could be within the same nation. There could be different cultures within a nation. India is a good example. How different cultures respond to similar historical events or global challenges, such as war or climate change, whatever, happens, and then you could do a comparison. Another example is, partition in India. We had, it could be on the eastern border or on the western border. The comparison could be made there. What else does comparative literature explore? The evolution and spread of literary genres, motifs, and narrative techniques across the world. So how they spread the different motifs, one cultural icon, how it is seen in different parts of the world. And what another area which comparative literature explores is the relationship between language, literature, and identity in different national and cultural contexts. And lastly, I would say that comparative literature, literary research also explores the interplay between literature and other forms of cultural production, including film, art, and music. So, though, like I just mentioned, in the broader literature, literary, and cultural studies, all of these are now part of larger uh, cultural studies. Now, this was my brief, you could say, introduction to, you know, comparative world literatures, the research and the methodology. I believe earlier also a lot of discussion has gone on this. And I will come to what I really do want to talk about is the formatting. Again, some very basic things, but like I just mentioned, in all the uh, journal submissions that we get, having edited one Scopus journal a few times, guest editor, and the two journals I'm associated with for many years, Majo and Indraprasth, you know, from senior faculty to research scholars. These are some very basic things which are not followed, and we find that these lacunae in the uh, research thesis which come to us. So, one is, of course, when we do a research paper, there is a research standard research format. You know, we have the structure of the paper, I would say. We all know we should follow the MLA for citations, but it is not often followed. In fact, just 2 days ago, there was a very good thesis, but particularly for the blocked quotations and the in-text quotations, they were not at all formatted properly. You know, there were quotation marks and it was not indented. So people take it lightly, you know, for your research to have that international acceptance, to make it look authentic, scholarly, and understood by a person anywhere in the world, you need to present it in a proper format. And and of course, the epigraph also there was not formatted properly, in addition to many other problems. So now the structure of a paper, you know, again, I'm just quickly going over it as everybody knows that, but still often not followed. The introduction, the literature review, because the literature review is very important, even though even if it's a few sentences, it sets the base for your paper, the very reason your paper is required, that you know what kind of work, because that no research work is in vacuum. It is always a continuation of what has gone earlier. So literature review will tell the readers what kind of work has gone before and how it has influenced your work, and then what it has not been done in that area which justifies your research work. So literature review is very important. Then, of course, the research question or problem statement should be given. And then, of course, how you plan to go about it, the methodology. And of course, then the findings and the results. Of course, in literature, they are not statistical mostly, but still what you have found, you know, honestly through your readings or analysis of your text. And then, of course, the conclusion. This is a very basic standard format of a research paper. Now, some other things which I would like to highlight, which needs to be given attention, paid attention to. Now, one is the title. I think we can come to the not only the entire paper, but the title also. There should be clarity and precision. A vague title or a, very lengthy title takes away right away. That's the first impression. A person who looks at the title should be able to say what your paper is about, and that's very important. So clear language in the title as well as, of course, in the entire paper, precise and unambiguous. There should be absolute clarity. It should not be vague, defined. So now when you start your paper, you need to define your basic terms, the main key terms and concepts, to ensure clarity for the reader. Now, going back to the title a little bit, because I think that's very important. A few things which I often find. One is that, even though we know all the function words should begin with a small letter, but all the other words must begin with a capital letter. That's often not followed. And of course, usually if there is a subheading or a colon, the word which comes after that should also be capitalized, even if it is a function word, if it is an analysis or a study. But because it is the beginning of the next sentence, so to say, it is the subheading, it should begin with a capital letter. Another thing about the title is that, we need to follow the MLA rules in terms of, if there is a book, or a anthology, or a film, then you need to italicize that, which occurs the name of the book or film in your title. You need to italicize that. If there is you are referring to a chapter or an essay or a series, in a whole serial, maybe if you say, suppose it's a television serial, just one episode, then you need to put it in quotation marks. Another thing in the title which many people don't know about is that, when a word is hyphenated, usually if the word, for whatever reason, if it's the first word in a sentence in the text, or if it is a name, whatever reason, if the first letter is capital, the word which comes, the half word after the hyphen, usually is a small letter. But in the title of a paper, the latter part of the hyphenated word also begins with a capital letter. Now, these seem like very basic things, capital letter, small letter, but these are internationally accepted, norms, and of course we all know MLA 9th edition right now in literature, which need to be followed, which are not often followed. Then again, very basic things, structure and organization. You should have a logical flow. The thoughts should not be disjointed. And now another, when we say structure and organization, what is recently the trend is, I've seen the subsections or headings. Now, in literary papers, we do not encourage too many subheadings or subsections like these. Even in the thesis, I often find people are writing 1.1, 1.2, 1.2, 1.2. It's like a scientific, a statistical kind of analysis where everything is mostly in points and numbers. Now, that is not really the proper way to, whether it is any literary topic, and of course, whether it is world literature. In literature, yes, where required, we need to give subheadings, but we need to be very judicious with the use of subheadings. And we do not have to have subheadings and subheadings. Sometimes it's so confusing also, which is a subheading and which is a subheading. So for that purpose, the MLA says you could either have a different font size. The biggest title chapter, it could be a larger font size. The subheading can be slightly smaller font size, or it can be bold. And then another subheading can be a smaller font size. So again, so the structure and organization, usually the paragraph form is better. Only when really required, you can put some points there, but otherwise, often young scholars are now putting everything a lot in too many subheadings and point forms, which is not the way to be done. Now, objectivity. The objectivity in your work, you need to avoid personal bias. You need to be very impersonal, not emotional. You should, have an objective viewpoint. And even if you have to say something, your thesis is pointing to certain issues within any kind of group, it has to then be stated in a very matter-of-fact way, in a very matter-of-fact tone, with proper citations and examples to prove your point. Using emotional language or being biased is not the way to make a point. So the tone has to be very formal. In fact, and then not the same thesis I was talking about, which had the formatting was not right. Also the tone, the said often in between this, the word language was very informal and almost like slang-like, very conversational. So now let's discuss this. In research work, you don't get personal. Try to minimize the I, or the intrusion of the self in your research work. So, you may wish, there is no hard and fast rule about that. You may wish to say I a few times sometimes, but it should not be very obtrusive or very, jarring. And no casual language. Let's now discover this. Let's go on this journey. Kind of, that is not acceptable. You have to learn that the tone has to be formal, impersonal, and sometimes scholars are also using short forms. Those are usually used for conversations and informal language. Contractions like didn't do that, did not is a preferred way. So the contractions and short forms should be avoided. Citations, of course, are the most problematic, and referencing. We have in-text citations, and we have citations at the end of any paper or work thesis, at the research work, which are usually the list at the end, which is list of works cited and consulted. So the in-text citation should be done properly. Otherwise, it, again, like I said, your work will not carry that seriousness, or it will not be considered scholarly enough if it is not following those. It somehow shows a lack of seriousness if you're not following the proper format. Now, inside citations, I will not explain here because that is very obvious. But the most common error I find is that when a sentence ends, the citation is to be given within brackets, within round brackets, and the full stop will come after, because that completes the sentence, because you are giving that reference to the sentence which has gone before. Very often people put the full stop and then put those brackets and that reference of the sentence which has gone before. But if your period or full stop is coming before the brackets, then that the information is aligning with the next sentence. I hope I'm able to clarify that. So these little things, though, seems very small. How does it matter where a full stop or a period is placed? But it is very important. And of course, for the list of works cited, there is a proper format which needs to be followed. And there have been minor changes from the 8th to the 9th, which need to be taken note of. Now, the engagement or the critical analysis, that's very important. That will show you the strength or the weakness of your work, and clearly state the contribution you are making to the field. And I always tell scholars that you need to understand that you need to be very honest with your work. You need to approach the problem with a very open mind, with a very objective mind, and not already have an idea to prove, because that way you do not approach the research properly. You are already looking only for those quotes or instances which prove your point right. But then there is no point for research. Then you already have your mind made up. That is not research. So you need to be very open. In fact, what makes research richer is when you find some contradictions, which you were not expecting. And those, when recorded, because nothing is in absolute terms, life is very complex, nothing is in black and white. So, in fact, those contraries make your research richer, genuine, and create more debates and discussions. So always take into account, also pick up genuinely whatever you find, and not only those instances from the text which you wish to prove your point, because then that is not honest research. Yeah, you need to be concise, avoid repetitions, which is again, a very common practice, and lengthy arguments where the whole point gets lost. And not only lengthy arguments, there are two things I would like to point out here. One is, of course, in the very long discussion, sometimes the sentences also become very long. Now that creates a lot of problem. What you are trying to say, the clarity of what you are trying to say gets lost. So be very clear, brief, precise. And simple language is good. Simple English is good English. Students, scholars often have this feeling that they have to sound very scholarly. So they will go to the thesaurus and force high sounding words, heavy words, which are not appropriate. Looking for a synonym in the thesaurus is not the right way, because every word has its own subtle connotations. So sometimes the meaning gets so lost in this convoluted language that it takes away from your work. So it's better to have simpler, shorter discussions, shorter sentences. So to make your point absolutely clear, verbose language is not good language. Your argument should be very precise. Of course, there has to be a proper methodology and rigor to your paper, to your research work, so that clarity should be there, and your findings should also be presented in a very clear and concise manner. And you need to be very ethical in your research work, whether it is plagiarism, which is the biggest problem, especially with AI, coming in, that that this temptation to lift work, lift language, or even other from critics works, the temptation to lift that. But or even if sometimes scholars think that they are not picking up the exact words, they are just putting it in their own words and writing, that is also plagiarism, because it is somebody else's concept, somebody else's idea you are trying to show as your own. So avoid all those, and other considerations of ethics in terms of ethics towards, or the manner or the language used for any other for anyone, otherizing, marginalizing, or even sensitivity towards say the environment or animals. One needs to be very ethical in one's language and one's work. Now, I already mentioned that you need to do honest research. I will not repeat that, which means that approach your text with a very open mind. And well, you may start by having some assumptions, but those are not, those may be proved wrong, but that's fine. That's okay. That's all what research is all about. You don't have to always, otherwise there is no need for research if you already know what you want to prove. And it's always good, I tell my students also, always scholars, that whatever work you do, if you're a teacher or a scholar, to show your work to your peers, because after you have worked on your research project, whether it's a paper or a thesis or a dissertation for a long time, you yourself are not able to see many things over there. You read it so many times, or whether it is language issues or formatting, or even otherwise repetitions or any anomalies, and it happens with the brightest of scholars. Some of my brightest scholars, when they submit their work, there are so many typos and errors because you are not able to see that in your own work. So it is always a good idea, so that you get an idea about even your thought process, content, if you're on the right track. Of course, you've been discussing with your mentors and your seniors and your teachers, but even otherwise, it's good to get peer review and feedback. And of course, revisions are very important. Correct grammar, punctuation, is another big problem, is very important. Students think that they have something very important to say, and we think that, punctuation is not important. Often I find that a sentence goes on and on with just a comma, but that's not the right way. In fact, the MLA, I always encourage everyone to please read the punctuation section of the MLA. It is very helpful. It will give you some very good tips on the use of the colon, comma, semicolon, inverted commas, italics, when to italicize, when not to italicize. So these are all very important, which need to be followed. Now, how much time have we left? Let's say about almost time, maybe another 5 minutes. Um, Another very often so question which comes is when I say we should use neutral formal language, is the third person better or the first person? I already mentioned that there is no hard and fast rule. Sometimes American journals could be a little bit more informal than the others, but still the I and the first person should not be very obvious. Usually, the third person is preferred. It gives a more neutral, more formal tone to your writing. Um, Yeah, so another thing is, I'm just trying to see from the little jottings I have to pick up the important points or the points which I find, like I mentioned during my editing, which are more oftenly flouted so that they can be. Um, so in writing, when we write, we use the names of characters. That is fine. That is most acceptable. But we should not be using the first name when we refer to a writer or an author. I don't know if that is the experience of most of you teachers, if you're listening, but that is my experience in not only the PhD students, but especially in the classes a lot, in the master's classes. One has to keep reinforcing. For example, I'm saying, the first time one refers to the author, one should use the full name, first and the last name. So if I say William Wordsworth, but after that references, when each time I speak, I could say Wordsworth. I will not say William, because after all, we are not on, it's not informal. It's not first person address. So it should be Wordsworth. So students often tend to overlook this. They are often using the first name, so that also, scholars have to be sensitized towards. But of course, for characters, it's perfectly fine. We use say Lucy Gray, we can say Lucy. Characters, we use the first names. And another, again, very often flouted punctuation problem is the difference between, or the usage of the hyphen and the dash. The hyphen, we all know, is a shorter form of the dash, and it hyphenates a word. It breaks up a word or joins two words, whereas a dash is when something follows, or and so or when we use it in, like we use brackets. So that difference, and also the formatting in terms of, do we use a space before and after a hyphen and a dash? So obviously for before and after a hyphen, we do not give any space, because that is joining two words. But for a hyphen, you can be consistent. You may give a space, but that should be consistent throughout your work. It should either have a space before and after each time you use a dash, which is a longer, or sometimes systems don't have a hyphen, so you can use click the hyphen twice and it becomes a dash. But you need to be consistent. So this is something which is very often most in research work, this is not followed. It is very haphazard. Either sometimes the the hyphen is used in place of a dash, the dash is used in place of a hyphen, and the spacing is also not right. And spacing reminds me that the semicolon or the full stop or the comma, there is never a space before, but there is always a space after the use of a semicolon or a comma or a period or a full stop. Yeah, I mean, so that again is one of the very basic things about research, when researchers have to be careful about that, not to be very descriptive, but to be analytical. We don't need a description or a narration, or a story. It doesn't have to be narrated or described, but there has to be more of analysis. It is presumed that the reader is familiar with the text, or you can give a very brief introduction to the text, that's fine. But then the entire research work should not be a long description. It should be more of an analysis. The use of jargon is not academic or scholarly. Like I already mentioned, it is actually counterproductive. So, flowery language, jargon, pedantic, and long phrases are best avoided. Um, um, I already spoke about using selective quotes, and if there is an error in the quote, in brackets, we in square brackets we write SIC. Uh, this is also something. Again, these are basic rules of grammar, but like I said, often flouted more than followed. I think I will end here, because these are all again. There's a lot more in terms of basic things, but well, I hope with this I would at least drawn your attention to some very basic things, but which we need to be aware of when we are doing research, or the methodology we follow and the formatting in comparative world literatures. Thank you, Paramita.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an engaging lecture, where you defined comparative world literature as an interdisciplinary study of texts across cultures and languages, focusing on areas such as cross-cultural, transnational, and adaptation studies. You also emphasized the key principles of academic writing, including proper formatting as per MLA 9th edition, and the coherent structure and an objective formal tone free from personal bias. I believe these insights are especially helpful for research scholars, as they provide clear methodological guidance and improve academic rigor and enhance the clarity and professionalism of their scholarly work. Thank you once again, ma'am. So, as we come to the conclusion of this enlightening webinar on comparative world literatures, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who made today's session a meaningful and memorable academic experience. On behalf of Hindi University West Bengal, we express our deepest thanks to our respected chairperson, Professor Nandini Sahu, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Hindi University West Bengal, for her inspiring leadership and constant encouragement that made this event possible. Our sincere appreciation goes to our eminent speakers, Professor Manpreet Kaur Kang and Dr. Shashi Khurana ma'am, for their thought-provoking insights and scholarly deliberations. Their perspectives really, on literature across cultures and borders have enriched our understanding of the global literary landscape. And we are also thankful to the university administration, our technical team, and particularly Mr. Raj for ensuring the smooth coordination of the entire event. Most importantly, heartfelt thanks to all our participants, faculty members, and students for joining us today and engaging with such enthusiasm. Your presence and participation added depth and warmth to this academic gathering. Let us carry forward the spirit of comparative inquiry and cultural dialogue that this webinar has inspired. Thank you once again, and we look forward to meeting you all in our next academic venture. Thank you, and have a very good day. Namaskar.